Chicas! It's been a while since we've done that one. I missed hearing that one.
Since you've done that.
That's right. As you can tell,
Let me take my.
I will be your host
boy.
this evening, Hercules Gomez, joined by Janish Mihalic, ex-U.S. men's national team veteran, and Shaka Hislop, ex-Trinidad and Tobago veteran. Gentlemen, happy Father's Day.
It's our night. It's
Thank you
our
very much,
night.
Nick. That's about as good
No
as the
surprise.
day
Is that as good as your night's going to get?
That was
Jack?
where it peaked. Breakfast.
Well, don't go anywhere, all you fathers out there. We've got a big show tonight. Lots to come. We're going to get to the U.S. men's national team, obviously Gold Cup. We're going to talk about the Club World Cup, Messi and friends. And we're going to sprinkle in some Mexico, who is also in action. But first, while we're here, the U.S. men's national team versus the Trinidad and Tobago national team. Very one-sided possession, as you can see, 70% to the Americans, 30% Trinidad and Tobago. Shots on goal, 21-3. Only 2 on target. Passes completed, expected goals. Pretty much one-sided affair. And to talk about that, we now welcome U.S. men's national team legend, Casey Keller. Case, how you doing, my man? What's going on? I guess we'll start with you, Casey. Talk to me about what you saw today. And more importantly, when I heard you on SportsCenter recently, you were talking about you wanted to see which of these players could rise to the occasion, prove that they belong. What did you see tonight?
Well, I saw a significantly overclassed Trinidad Tobago side. It was hard to make judgments, based off of the opponent they played against. But okay, let's take that aside. And first, what you have to do is you just have to play against the opponent that's in front of you, do the job at hand, and win the match comfortably. So on that side of it, after all the criticism that's been heaped on this U.S. national team, and rightfully so, which is the way they've played in the previous 4 matches, they played against a team that they were comfortably going to win. But you still have to do it. You still have to take care of business. I think in a match like this where there was so much space, so much poor defending from Trinidad, I thought Diego Luna, once again, I think worked hard, made a case for himself to continue in the national team. Malik Tillman did well. I think there's nothing wrong with his performance. Ajiman, once again, it was very comfortable. And then what I liked seeing is the game really at the beginning of that second half took a big lull. I really like seeing the subs coming on, and Brendan Aronson in particular with something to prove. Haji Wright as well with something to prove, coming on and kind of adding a little bit of spark off the bench where the match was already won and it was starting to take a little bit out of it. So, good work on that side of it, but really tough to judge. Sorry, Shaka, against a very, very poor Trinidad and Tobago.
Janish, if I'm not mistaken, you got your first play in Gold Cup action, 1991 against Trinidad and Tobago. You and Casey.
2-1 Shaka.
There you go.
2-1 Shaka.
Listen, the U.S. men's national team was coming off a 4-game losing streak, their worst streak in the last 18 years. On this roster, there are 15 Major League Soccer players out of a roster of 26. Tonight, 9 Major League Soccers played. 7 of those players had less than a handful of caps. Tim Ream, I believe, was the only player on the U.S. men's national team with Gold Cup experience. And yet, Mauricio Pochettino puts on a lineup that was very inexperienced. Big call on his part. What did you see?
What I saw, listen, I just want to stop the bleeding. The bar was so low, it was actually under the ground, I think, before that. So if we're talking about building the culture of winning with all the things that we had ahead of it, players missing or not wanting to come in, right? I mean, inability for Mauricio Pochettino to really work with his best players. I saw a team that responded, right? I mean, with high pressure, you look at this lineup, you mentioned Tim Ream. It seems to me the narrative is to, why is he still on the team? But I thought he was actually very important. Maybe it was his experience in a game like this when Trinidad and Tobago played low black, it was good. So, look, the one thing I got out of it is that realistically, one player that will play in the World Cup or will have a chance to play in the World Cup next year was Malik Tillman, and he delivered, right? And we can talk about the opponents. I'm humble because Trinidad and Tobago has humbled us in the past. We've had the results against you, Shaka, here in United States, but look, they've delivered. There's absolutely no reason to criticize the game itself.
Shaka, I look at this team and the way they've been playing lately, whether it's Turkey or Switzerland, where in both games they were outplayed for large stretches of that game. They just came off being embarrassed against Switzerland, and they just beat a Trinidad and Tobago team that many probably fans and pundits out there would say they're supposed to beat. A bit arrogant from the Americans, especially where they're at right now?
No, listen, I'll be honest. Coming into this one, I thought the US were the better of the two teams, even with the issues that they've been having. But at the same time, I feel there's a feel-good factor, or had been a feel-good factor about Trinidad and Tobago football over the last couple of months, coming off decent results in World Cup qualifying against St. Kitts, also against Costa Rica, albeit a losing effort, and then just kind of witnessing what's been happening with US soccer over recent weeks. I felt this was an opportunity for us to maybe gain in some confidence in taking a game to the United States in arguably their weakest moment. You say for 18 years, you could probably make the argument that this is the worst US team for that period, kind of especially given the omissions. But then I look at well, not just the performance, but how Trinidad and Tobago went about our business, and it gave the US nothing to worry about, nothing to work on, nothing to build on. It was an absolute cruise in the park. So from a US perspective, it's exactly what you needed at this point. Again, given those issues, from a Trinidad and Tobago perspective, it's given us, me in particular, real reason for pause here, because I'm not sure how I take anything positive from what I saw in that game.
Difficult to take positives if you're Trinidad and Tobago, although I will give Dwight York a lot of credit. They've only lost one competitive match under Dwight York. He seems to somewhat have righted the ship here. It's hard to argue with your assessment of this being the worst U.S. men's national team in the last 18 years without stating the obvious 2017, the team that actually lost that right to go to the World Cup against this very Trinidad and Tobago team on that night. Alvin Jones was a monster tonight. He was probably one of the biggest factors of why Trinidad lost. Case, you've been one of the biggest critics for Mauricio Pochettino. I believe last time you were on FC, you mentioned how it didn't look like Mauricio Pochettino knew who he had, the players at his disposal. What did you see from Mauricio Pochettino tonight? Did you see a clear DNA from the Americans?
Again, I don't know how you judge it based on, because what are we looking at? We're looking at a U.S. men's national team that's supposed to be playing, against World Cup opponents, against, European opponents, against good South American opponents, and they've struggled. So, yes, it's a good result. Yes, it kind of rights the ship, as Janusz said, but at the same time, you have to take into account the opposition you're playing against. And we saw Arfsen get absolutely destroyed by Switzerland, and then today never got put under any pressure whatsoever. So then how do you judge the bounce back based off of the opponent? So I think that's the frustrating side of it, for me at least, and why I thought that it made a lot more sense to try to bring in more of a full squad against the two friendlies, kind of judge kind of where you are at this point, still being able to bleed in a few players that haven't had a lot of opportunities against a European opposition, and then say, okay, some of you other guys that I want to have a look at, you guys go on vacation. Now we're going to see you against a lesser opponents, and then we can see if that means then you get extra opportunities when we come into later camps against better opponents. So, yeah, for me, I'm still big question marks on Pochettino and how he's kind of handled the stars, the younger players coming through, the opposition that he's playing against, the tactics based on which opponents, where I really felt against today's match, particularly after watching the first 5 minutes, it didn't matter who the U.S. put out. It was going to be a comfortable win. And if it wasn't, then you hit major panic stations.
Well, that's where the U.S. was, hitting almost major panic station. This is a trap game for the U.S. men's national team, because here we are, they won a game they were supposed to win, and we're saying they're supposed to win. But what if they didn't? What if they didn't win this? We would be all over their throats. I'm going to give Mauricio Pochettino some credit here. You're right, Case. This is an impossible game to judge. Who would do that? but we asked John to actually do the same thing. Give us your player ratings for this game, John. I see you have, Freese, I think they mentioned his name for the first time in the 60th minute. The goalkeeper had very little to do. Walk us through your scoring here.
I start everything at 5, so ratings are always tough. Freese had that one save, right? That one half chance sort of created on the left wing where he had to intercept that ball. I think Casey would know that, so I gave him extra because other than that, he had nothing else to do. Tillman, I've obviously talked about. Ajamang played well today, but missed a lot of chances. We're in the process of always looking for that number 9. We're not sure if we actually have one. That's actually going to be good when you play against the best opposition. So he did a lot of good, but he also missed a lot of chances. Luna, I could say the same about him. I like McGlynn, one of the few players that we have to put arms around. He reminds me at times of Cole Palmer just a little bit in terms of creativity that we lack, especially in those positions. He was playing wider. I give him that, and I was actually thinking about giving him a lot more. Other than that, a little disappointing in the midfield. De La Torre and Berhalter started well. I thought that Berhalter would have been much better playing higher, and most of the time he was really playing number 6, and De La Torre got the green light. As we know, Berhalter probably feels better in the box-to-box position. And as I said, Tim Ream, 6, and maybe I should have given him more. He was really good. The entry passes, the long balls, I think he had 14 out of 15 out of the back. The long ball, passes were very, very good. So again, I do understand if we were in a better position, we would not be talking about Tim Ream right now. Perhaps we shouldn't, but I want to give him a little bit of credit because, for that young team, you needed somebody experienced, the only one that has played in the Gold Cup. And against any opposition, I think he did his job.
Case, I look at these ratings, I look at this lineup, and I could seriously make an argument where maybe Chris Richards is, in my eyes, the only legit starting player in this lineup.
Oh, I forgot about him.
Yet John gave him a 5. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I thought maybe under his own kind of, I like the explanation where you kind of start with a 5 and go from there. And I thought Richards covered well the couple times that Trinidad went out on the break. It was not really, again, being able to judge defensively because they really weren't put under enough pressure to be judged that often. I thought it was interesting that Freese got a save for intercepting a cross. I thought the ball had to be going toward goal and able for it to be a save. But I liked the interception. I thought it was really, really well done in a match where Freese had really little to do. And that interception was key because, yes, it probably would have been a tap-in. But for the most part, yeah, it was more kind of a judge on how the team kind of organized themselves, how they pressed Trinidad, who were pretty woeful in trying to play out of the back, particularly in the first half. It got a little better, I'd say, probably the first 15 minutes of the second half. But, yeah, I think this was really a case of seeing how the U.S. was able to break down a team, playing in a low block, playing with a lot of players behind the ball. And I thought, particularly after the first 15 minutes, they got a little bit more direct. They played the balls in dangerous areas. But then when you saw the defending on the last 2 goals, that's where it's difficult, guys, to really assess how well the U.S. can play forward because, yeah, there's a lot of frailties there in that Trinidad defensive unit.
All right, not a lot to get out of this game. I will echo you guys' statements on Diego Luna. He just seems to sniff it, seems to will things into fruition. He had himself another great game and another game where we're talking about Diego Luna. So he'll still be there with the U.S. men's national team probably in the future. All right.